Hi everyone, my name's Blythe. I'm here from the Tips team with this week's tutorial video. Our topic today is all about Google Forms. Maybe you've used forms to collect information from various audiences. Today's topic is how to have students use forms to collaborate. I'll share 5 quick tips that will help you get started. Let's go. Tip number 1. We're going to use Force Make a Copy to share an existing form as a template. Maybe you've already created a form that you want your students to use as a jumping off point for starting to make their own questions. You can do this by sharing the form as Force Make a Copy. Open up the form that you want students to use. Click into the Omni box at the top where the URL is. Remove the word Edit and replace it with the word Copy. Now highlight this new URL, copy and paste wherever you want students to access this form. When they click on that link or open it up, they'll get a screen that looks like this. Now they click on Make a Copy, and they have their own to get started with. Tip number 2. Sharing options for forms include Send and Add Collaborators. Up here in the top right-hand corner, the Send button is where you'd normally find the Share button. When you hit Send, you'll have options to send the form to someone to respond to it, to complete the questions. But we want to collaborate in this case, and we want our students to be working together. So instead, beside the Send button, I'm going to use the 3 dots and go down to Add Collaborators. By adding a collaborator, I'm adding students as a full editor. That means they can edit and revise all of the questions, the settings, and the features of the form, as well as view all of the responses. This is important for data privacy, so ensure that you want your collaborators to also see how others respond to the form. I'm going to add a student account to our form as a collaborator so we can see what that looks like as we go through the rest of the tips. Before I hit send to add Amanda as a collaborator on this form, I see I can also copy a link and send it to her that way. But before I do that, I want to click on the drop arrow beside editor and see that I now have an option to add an expiration. Now I can add a date and a time for which Amanda will no longer have access as a collaborator to this form. Here I am in the Students Drive, and under the Shared with Me tab, Amanda can go ahead and access the form. And just like the teacher or the student that shared it with her, she now has full access to it. Tip number 3. The blue line to the left of any element in the form indicates where someone is working. On this screen, I have the form open under Amanda's account. I've clicked into the question editor for this question, and the blue line on the left-hand side of that element indicates that that's where I'm working. If I scroll back up, keeping my eyes on the left-hand side here, I see that this element has a green line, and here's my name beside it telling Amanda that I'm working on this element. If you have multiple editors in the form, then their names will appear beside the question that they are currently editing. Tip number 4. When you get multiple editors, you might need to change the order of the elements. Each element in a form can be reordered by hovering over the question box and then clicking on the 6 gray dots at the top. By clicking on the 6 gray dots and holding, then that element becomes highlighted and starts to move. Then I can move my mouse up and down to navigate through the form and see where I might want that element to be. Tip number 5, and definitely my favorite. This one is import questions. Students don't have to start from blank. As we saw in the first tip, you can share a form with them with question stems or question formats to get started with. Students can also import questions from any form already in their drive. They can do so by navigating to the right-hand question menu and vertically going down to the second option, when hover over, it says Import Questions. Here I have two main ways to search for forms in my drive. The default is for all forms, or I can move over to the right for forms I have recently used or opened. I've selected through some of my forms and found one here on Math Review. I'm going to double click this form, and then a question menu opens up on the right-hand side. Here I can click for Importing All Questions, or I can select just the questions that I would like to add to this form. In this way, if students have already created a form, they can reuse those questions or modify them slightly to create multiple opportunities for retrieval practice. Once I click Import, the question will fit into the existing form wherever my cursor or blue line indicator was last. It will come in just underneath it. Once the question has been imported, I can go ahead and edit it by clicking into the box and have all of my options for the question editor. I hope these tips were helpful. Forms can be a very powerful tool to encourage students to keep practicing on their own, getting feedback, and pushing forward with their goals for learning. My last piece of advice that I will suggest that I'll My last tidbit of advice is that students sometimes get stuck on the look and feel of a form and not so much on the content or the function of the form. The artist's palette up in the top right-hand menu next to the puzzle piece and the preview eye will allow students to alter the image at the top as well as the colors and the font. Sometimes collaborating on these types of decisions can be the most difficult. Be sure to mention to students timeframes and criteria, perhaps even some processes for how to make decisions on the theme or the look and feel of the form. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps you get started using Google Forms to have your students collaborate in your classroom. Remember to subscribe to our channel, check back for our weekly videos, and we'd love to hear from you, so connect with your TIPS team member.